I am Mason, 34 years old, and my own mother packed a bomb in my luggage to steal my life's work. Before I tell you how I sent my entire family to federal prison, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. It was a Tuesday that started like any other, but ended with a gun pointed at my head. I parked my Porsche Panamera in the driveway of my parents' house. The engine purred, a low, mechanical growl that usually gave me a sense of satisfaction. I worked hard for this car. I worked hard for everything I have. I'm a cybersecurity consultant for Fortune 500 companies. My job is to find holes in digital walls and patch them before the bad guys get in. Ironic, isn't it? I spent my life protecting corporations from external threats, but I never thought to put up a firewall against the people sitting at my own kitchen table. I was on my way to JFK Airport for a conference in London. A big contract was on the line, a salary bump, a promotion, the kind of deal that changes your tax bracket permanently. I had stopped by to say a quick goodbye. My mother, Patricia, met me at the door. She looked frail. That was her weapon of choice. Frailty. She wore a faded cardigan, her eyes rimmed with red, looking like the weight of the world was resting on her slumped shoulders. "Mason," she said, her voice trembling just enough to trigger my guilt reflex. "I'm so glad you stopped. Did you get the text about Aunt Ida?" "Yeah, Mom," I said, checking my watch. "I don't have much time. My flight boards in 2 hours." I know. You're always so busy." "Too busy for us," she sighed, stepping aside to let me in. The house smelled of stale coffee and something else. Tension. My father, Robert, was sitting in his recliner, staring at the TV. He didn't even look up. He just grunted. He's been bitter ever since his hardware store went under 10 years ago. He looked at my suit, my watch, my car outside, and all he saw was what he didn't have. And then there was Julian, my younger brother, the golden child. He was 28, unemployed, and currently eating a bowl of cereal on the couch at 2 p.m. He looked up, gave me a lazy smirk, and went back to scrolling on his phone. "Hey, big shot," Julian mumbled. "Nice wheels. Let me take it for a spin while you're in London." "Not in this lifetime, Julian," I said, keeping my tone light but firm. Mom bustled into the room, holding a heavy object wrapped in thick, brown butcher paper and excessive amounts of tape. It looked like a brick. "Mason, I need a huge favor," she said, tears already welling up. She was good. Hollywood-level good. "Aunt Ida is doing poorly. The doctors say, well, they don't say good things. I have this old clock. It was Grandma's. Ida always loved it. I want her to have it before she goes." I looked at the package. "Mom, I can't just carry a random box. I have TSA pre-check. I don't check bags. I only have my carry-on." "It's small," she insisted, shoving the heavy brick into my hands. "It's solid brass, that's why it's heavy. And I wrapped it in lead foil inside the paper because, the magnets in the scanners. I don't want the mechanism to get ruined. Please, Mason, for your dying aunt." I hesitated. My gut was screaming at me. As a security expert, rule number 1 is never transport unknown packages. But this wasn't a stranger in a dark alley. This was my mother, the woman who made me peanut butter sandwiches, the woman who nursed me through chicken pox. "Fine," I sighed, shoving the heavy package into the bottom of my leather carry-on bag. "But if they make me unwrap it, I'm letting them." "No!" she shouted, a little too sharply. We all froze. Even Dad looked up. She quickly softened her expression. Please try not to. Took me hours to wrap it so the glass wouldn't break. Just tell them it's an antique." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her hands were shaking. I thought it was grief for her sister. I was wrong. It was adrenaline. "Okay, Mom. I have to go." I turned to leave. Julian stood up and actually walked me to the door. That was new. He leaned against the doorframe, watching me unlock the Porsche. "Have a safe flight, bro," he said. There was something in his eyes. A gleam. It looked like excitement. "Don't worry about anything here. We've got everything under control." I drove to the airport with a strange knot in my stomach. The traffic was brutal, giving me too much time to think. Why was the box so heavy? Why lead foil? Who wraps a clock in lead? But I pushed the thoughts away. I was focused on the London deal. I was thinking about my presentation, about the lawyer I needed to call regarding a patent filing, about the future. I arrived at JFK, parked in the long-term lot, and walked briskly to Terminal 4. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue. Felt like a good day to succeed. I breezed through the check-in kiosk. I had my mobile boarding pass ready. I walked up to the security checkpoint. The line was short. I felt lucky. Laptop out, shoes on, belt off. The TSA agent droned. I placed my leather bag on the conveyor belt. I put my phone, my wallet, and my watch in the bin. I walked through the metal detector. No beep. I waited for my bag on the other side. The belt stopped. I tapped my foot, checking the time. "Come on," I muttered. A TSA agent was staring at the monitor. He squinted. Then he leaned closer. Then he stopped chewing his gum. He didn't look at me. He picked up a radio. "Level 1 supervisor to lane 4, he said. His voice was tight. I felt a prickle of irritation. "Is there a problem?" "It's probably just my laptop charger." The agent didn't answer. He stepped back from the machine, putting a hand on his hip, near his belt. A supervisor walked over, a heavy-set woman with a serious face. She looked at the screen. Her eyes widened. She looked at me. Then she looked at the bag. Then she looked at the screen again. "Sir," she said, her voice loud enough to carry. "Is this your bag?" "Yes," I said. "Look, my mom gave me an antique clock. It's wrapped in lead foil. That's probably what you're seeing." "Do not touch the bag, sir," she commanded. She pressed a button on her radio. Code red. Lane 4. I repeat, code red. The atmosphere in the terminal shifted instantly. The hum of conversation died. People stopped walking. "What is going on?" I asked, stepping forward. "Back away from the screening area," she yelled, pointing a finger at me. Suddenly, the alarms went off. A piercing, rhythmic shriek that drilled into my skull. Red lights began to flash on the ceiling. Whoop, whoop, whoop. "Get down. Get on the ground. Now." I turned around to see 3 men in tactical gear sprinting toward me. They weren't TSA. They were Port Authority police, and they had assault rifles raised. "Whoa, wait." I raised my hands. "I'm a security consultant. I have identification." I didn't get to finish the sentence. One of them hit me like a linebacker. The air left my lungs in a violent whoosh as I slammed into the hard linoleum floor. My cheek was pressed against the cold tiles. A knee dug into my spine. Suspect secured. Bag is isolated. "It's a clock." I wheezed, trying to breathe. "It's just a damn clock." I was handcuffed, tight. The metal bit into my wrists. They dragged me up, not gently, and marched me away from the checkpoint. As they hauled me backward, I saw the bomb squad arriving. Men in those thick Hurt Locker suits. They were surrounding my leather bag like it was a monster. I saw the lead technician carefully cut open the leather. He pulled out the brown package. He used a scanner on it. The device in his hand lit up like a Christmas tree. He carefully, ever so carefully, peeled back the tape. I was 50 feet away, but I saw his reaction. He recoiled. He ripped his mask off, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead instantly. He turned to the police captain standing nearby. I will never forget the look of absolute terror in his eyes. He didn't yell. He whispered, but in the sudden silence of the terminal, it echoed like a gunshot. "Clear the terminal. Now, it's active." My heart stopped. It wasn't a clock. My mother hadn't given me a clock. My knees gave out and the officers had to hold me up. As they dragged me toward a secure room, the chaos erupted behind us. Screams, people running, the stampede of hundreds of terrified travelers. And all I could think was, "Why, Mom?" They stripped me of everything. My belt, my shoelaces, my dignity. I was sitting in a room that didn't officially exist. Cinder block walls painted a soul-crushing shade of gray. A steel table bolted to the floor. A two-way mirror that I knew hid a dozen eyes watching my every twitch. I was shivering. Not from cold, though the AC was blasting, but from shock. My mind was racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to debug the situation like it was a corrupted line of code. Input: Mom gives me a box. Process: TSA finds a bomb. Output: I am facing 20 years to life in a federal supermax. The door buzzed and swung open. A woman walked in. She didn't look like a cop. She looked like a shark in a pantsuit. Sharp features, eyes that didn't blink enough, and a file folder that she slammed onto the metal table with a sound that made me flinch. "I'm Special Agent Sarah Miller, FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force," she said, sitting down opposite me. "And you, Mason, are in a world of trouble." "I didn't know," I croaked. My throat was dry as sandpaper. "I want a lawyer. I need water." "You'll get water when I get answers," she said, leaning forward. "Do you know what was in that box, Mason?" "A clock," I said. "My mom said it was a clock for my Aunt Ida." Agent Miller laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was dry and devoid of humor. She opened the folder and slid a glossy 8x10 photo across the table. I looked down. I almost threw up. It wasn't a clock. It was a metal canister hooked up to a crude timing mechanism and a lump of gray putty. "That," she pointed a manicured finger at the photo, "is a rudimentary explosive device. But the explosive isn't the problem. The canister is. Do you know what was inside that canister, Mason?" I shook my head, mute with horror. "Cobalt-60, she said quietly. "Industrial grade. If that thing had gone off at cruising altitude, or even in the terminal, the radiation dispersion would have killed thousands. Not instantly. Slowly. Painfully." "Oh my God," I whispered. I buried my face in my hands. "You have to believe me. My mother. She gave it to me." "So you say..." Miller leaned back. "Here's the problem, Mason. We looked into your family. Your father is a failed businessman. Your brother is a gambling addict with no job. And you're the success story. The rich kid. Maybe you got tired of supporting them? Maybe you wanted to make a political statement? Or maybe you're just a mule for someone else. I am a security consultant," I yelled, slamming my handcuffed hands on the table. "I make $300,000 a year. I drive a Porsche. Why would I blow myself up? Rich people do crazy things," she shrugged. "But let's look at the facts. You carried the bag. You bypassed the check-in counter. You tried to rush through security. I have pre-check. And," she interrupted, pulling out a plastic evidence bag, "you received this text message exactly 2 minutes after you were tackled." She held up my phone. It was unlocked. They had used my Face ID while I was pinned to the ground. She showed me the screen. "Sender. Unknown number message. Don't say a word. We have your family. If you talk, they die. Stick to the story." I stared at the screen. The blood drained from my face. "See," I gasped. "I'm being set up. Or they are being held hostage. You have to send a team to my parents' house. They're in danger." Miller watched me closely. She was studying my micro-expressions. "We already sent a local unit to do a welfare check on your parents, Mason. They're fine. They're sitting in their living room watching the news. They told the officers they haven't seen you in weeks." My jaw dropped. "What? That's a lie. I was there 2 hours ago. My brother watched me drive away." "They deny it," Miller said calmly. "They said you're estranged. Said you've been acting erratic lately. Talking about government conspiracies." The room spun. The betrayal hit me harder than the police tackle. They weren't being held hostage. They were the hostage takers. And I was the sacrifice. "I need my lawyer," I said, my voice turning into steel. "Not the court-appointed one. I need Elijah Vance." Elijah was my college roommate. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was a shark in a bespoke suit. He handled high-stakes corporate litigation and criminal defense. I trusted him with my life. "Fine," Miller said. She stood up. But just so you know, the Patriot Act gives us a lot of leeway. You're not going home tonight, Mason. You might not go home ever. 2 hours later, Elijah burst into the room. He looked like he had run all the way from Manhattan. His tie was askew, his hair messy. "Everyone out," he barked at the guard. "Attorney-client privilege. Now." When the door clicked shut, Elijah dropped the act. He grabbed my shoulders. "Mason, look at me. They are talking about domestic terrorism charges. They are talking about Guantanamo levels of serious. Did you do it?" "No," I hissed. "Elijah, it was Mom. She gave me the box. She said it was for Aunt Ida." Elijah pulled out a chair and sat down, rubbing his temples. Okay, I believe you, but we have a massive problem. I just came from the magistrate's office. Can you get me bail?" "I can try, but that's not the problem." Elijah lowered his voice. "While you've been sitting in here, someone tried to trigger a power of attorney clause on your accounts." "What?" "Your parents," Elijah said grimly. "They contacted your bank and your investment broker. They claimed that since you are being detained under the Terrorism Act, you are incapacitated. They presented a document, Mason, a durable power of attorney signed by you 3 years ago." "I never signed that," I said, shaking. "I never signed anything like that." "I know," Elijah said. "I looked at the digital copy they faxed over. The signature. It looks real, Mason. But here's the kicker. They aren't trying to freeze your assets to protect them. They are trying to liquidate them. They put in a rush order to sell your stock portfolio and transfer the cash to an offshore holding account in the Caymans." I felt sick. It was a heist. It wasn't just about framing me. It was about stripping me clean while I rotted in a cell. "Julian," I whispered. "It has to be Julian. He's the only one who knows how to set up an offshore account. Dad can barely use a PDF. We need to stop them," Elijah said. "But first, I need to get you out of here. I have to call in every favor I owe. I need a character witness. Someone with unimpeachable status." "Call Mr. Carter," I said. "Thomas Carter, the CEO of Arion Tech. I saved his company from that ransomware attack last month. He owes me." Elijah nodded. "Okay, listen to me, Mason. If we get you out, you are going to be watched. The FBI will be on you like glue. You can't go near your parents. You can't leave the state." "I don't want to go near them," I said, my eyes burning with a cold fury I had never felt before. "I want to bury them." Elijah packed up his briefcase. "Sit tight. This is going to be a long night." As he left, I sat alone in the silence. I thought about the text message. Stick to the story. It wasn't a threat from a kidnapper. It was a threat from Julian. He sent it to make me look guilty, to make the police think I was part of a cell. They wanted me locked away forever so they could spend my money. My own mother packed a dirty bomb in my bag and sent me to the airport, knowing I might never come back. For the first time in my life, I stopped thinking like a son. I started thinking like a cybersecurity consultant. They had hacked my life. Now I was going to hack theirs. The sun was rising when I walked out of the federal detention center. It should have felt like freedom, but it felt like stepping into a crosshair. Mr. Carter had come through. He posted a $2 million bond and put his own reputation on the line. I saw his black limousine waiting at the curb. Elijah was standing next to it, looking exhausted but triumphant. But there was a catch. I looked down at my ankle. A chunky, black GPS monitor was strapped tight against my skin. "House arrest," Elijah said as I approached. "It was the best I could do. You can go to your apartment and your office. That's it. If you deviate from the route by 1 block, the marshals will swarm you." "It's enough," I said. "Thanks, Elijah. Seriously." I got into the back of the car. I didn't want to talk. I turned on my phone, which the FBI had returned to me, likely after cloning the SIM card and installing spyware. I didn't care. Let them listen. I opened my banking app. Access denied. Account frozen due to suspicious activity. I opened my brokerage app. Pending transaction. Sell all positions. Rage is a funny thing. First it's hot like fire. But when it gets deep enough, it turns cold. Ice cold. I wasn't screaming. I was calculating. I arrived at my penthouse apartment in downtown Seattle. It was sterile, modern, and empty, exactly how I liked it. But now it felt like a bunker. I went straight to my server room. Yes, I have a server room in my apartment. I'm a nerd, and I'm paranoid. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough. I sat down at my terminal, a custom-built rig with 3 curved monitors. I cracked my knuckles. "Okay, Julian," I muttered. "Let's see how smart you really are." I knew Julian's passwords. He was lazy. He used variations of his high school football jersey number and his favorite dog's name. Titan 23. I didn't hack into the bank directly. That would violate my bail conditions. Instead, I accessed the family cloud account. I had set it up for them years ago to back up their photos. I had administrative access. I logged in. The first thing I checked was the location history. My mother lied to the FBI. She said I hadn't been to the house in weeks. But her iPhone location data showed her standing in the driveway at 2 p.m. yesterday. It showed my phone next to hers. Evidence number 1. Next, I went to the deleted items folder in their email. They thought hitting trash meant gone forever. Amateur hour. I found an email thread between Julian and a user named DarkVector77 on an encrypted mail service. Julian had been sloppy. He forwarded the confirmation to his regular Gmail to print it out. The subject line, delivery schedule. The content was a list of chemical components and a tracking number. But what caught my eye was the date. They had been planning this for 3 months. 3 months. While I was paying for Julian's car insurance, while I was taking Mom to brunch for her birthday, they were building a bomb to frame me. But why? I dug deeper. I pulled their credit reports. My father, Robert, was broke. Not just cash poor. He was drowning. 3 mortgages on the house. Maxed out credit cards. But Julian's finances were a horror show. I found a hidden folder on Julian's laptop backup labeled receipts. It wasn't receipts for groceries. It was screenshots of online crypto gambling sites. Negative $50,000. Negative $120,000. Negative $500,000. I did the math. Julian was down nearly $2 million. Then I saw a screenshot of a text conversation on WhatsApp. DarkVector77. TikTok, Julian. The Russians want their money. Or they want the mule. Julian. I have a mule. My brother. He travels international. He has pre-check. He's perfect. DarkVector77. If he gets caught? Julian. Then I invoke his power of attorney. I take his assets. You get paid either way. Win-win. I sat back in my chair. The breath knocked out of me. Win-win, I whispered. To my brother, my life ending in a federal prison was a win. To my parents, losing their eldest son was an acceptable cost to save their golden child from his gambling debts. I needed to see them. I needed to see what they were doing right now. I accessed the smart home system I had installed for them last Christmas. Thermostats, doorbells, and the living room security camera. I had set it up so they could check on the dog when they went out. I activated the feed. The video loaded. It was grainy, but clear enough. They were in the living room. The TV was on, showing CNN. The headline read, "Update on JFK Airport Security Incident." My mother wasn't crying. She was holding a glass of Chardonnay. My father was smoking a cigar, inside the house, which Mom never allowed. Julian was pacing, holding a tablet. I turned up the audio. "Are you sure the transfer will go through by tomorrow?" Dad asked, puffing on the cigar. "Relax, Pop," Julian said, his voice arrogant and grating. "The lawyer said as soon as Mason is formally indicted, the incapacity clause kicks in fully. We'll have access to the liquid cash by Friday. $2 million to pay off the Russians, and the rest is ours." "It's a shame," Mom said, taking a sip of wine. She sounded like she was discussing the weather. "Mason was a good boy, but he was always so distant. He never really loved us like you do, Julian." "He's arrogant," Dad spat. thinking he's better than us with his fancy car and his suits. He deserves a reality check. A reality check? I whispered to the screen, my hands shaking with rage. You sent me to prison for 20 years. I watched them toast. They clinked their glasses. To my destruction. I recorded everything. I saved it to 3 different cloud servers. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, Mason, a voice whispered. It was soft, feminine, but urgent. This is Agent Miller. Don't hang up. Agent Miller? Are you tapping my line? Yes, and I just saw what you just saw, she said. I froze. You have access to their cameras? We do now. You're good, Mason. But we're the FBI. We've been monitoring your brother for 6 months. We knew he was into something illegal, but we didn't know he was going to use you as the mule until the TSA alarm went off. You knew, I yelled. And you let me walk into that? We didn't know about the bomb, she said, her voice regretful. We thought it was just drugs. Listen to me. We have enough to arrest them for fraud, but that won't clear your name on the terrorism charges. The box contains specific isotopes that link to a major arms dealer. We need the top of the food chain. What do you want? We need a confession, she said. A specific one. We need them to admit they knew exactly what was in the box and who they were sending it to. If you can get them to say that on record, we can drop the charges against you and use you as a witness. How am I supposed to do that? I'm under house arrest. We can fix that, Miller said. But you have to be willing to walk back into the lion's den. You have to make them think they won. I looked at the screen. Julian was laughing at something on the TV. Tell me what to do, I said. The plan was dangerous. It required me to play the part of the defeated, broken son. A role I had been rehearsing my whole life without realizing it. Elijah came over that evening. When I told him the plan, he looked at me like I was insane. You want to meet them? Mason, if you violate the no-contact order, the judge will throw you back in a cell before you can say, entrapment. Agent Miller is arranging a temporary exception, I said, pacing the living room. The FBI will be listening. They want the supplier, Elijah, the guy Julian owes the money to. His name is Viktor Volkov. Dark Vector 77 foot. Elijah paled. Volkov? Mason, that's Russian organized crime. These people don't sue you. They dissolve you in acid. That's why Julian is so desperate, I said. He knows if he doesn't pay up by Friday, he's dead. That's why the timeline is so tight. That's why they needed my money now. I pulled up the dossier I had compiled. Look at this. Julian didn't just borrow money. He stole from Volkov's crypto exchange. He thought he was smart enough to hack a hacker. He got caught. The delivery, the box, was his penance. He was supposed to move the radioactive material to London. If I succeeded, his debt was cleared. If I failed, you were the collateral, Elijah finished. Exactly. If I get arrested, they liquidate my assets, pay Volkov the cash, and Julian walks away. Heads I lose, tails they win. My phone buzzed. It was Mom. I looked at Elijah. He nodded. Put it on speaker. Remember, you're scared. You're broken. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of fear I had felt in that interrogation room. I answered, Mom. I let my voice crack. Mason. Oh, thank God. She sobbed. The performance was Oscar-worthy. We've been so worried. The police were here, they were asking awful questions. Are you okay? I'm terrified, Mom. I stammered. They're talking about life in prison. They say it was a dirty bomb. Why did you give me a bomb, Mom? There was a pause. A calculated silence. Mason, honey, you know I didn't know what it was, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Julian got into some trouble. Some bad men forced us. They threatened to kill Dad. They threatened to kill you. We didn't have a choice. So you sacrificed me? No. We thought you could get it through, she cried. You're so smart, Mason. You always fix everything. We thought if anyone could handle it, it was you. I squeezed my eyes shut. You always fix everything. That was the hook they had used to control me for years. Mom, I can't go to prison, I whimpered. My life is over. They froze my accounts. I have nothing. Listen to me, she said sharply. The weeping stopped. We can save you, but you have to trust us. The lawyer, our family lawyer, Mr. Henderson, he says if you sign the power of attorney and plead guilty to a lesser charge of negligence, we can access your funds to pay for a top-tier defense team. We can pay off the people Julian owes and they'll go away. Then we can testify that you didn't know. You'll get probation. It was a lie. A beautiful, complex lie. If I pleaded guilty, I'd go away for 20 years. They'd take the money and run. I don't know, I said. Do you want to die in prison, Mason? It was Dad's voice now. He had been listening on the extension. Don't be stupid. Be a man. Take the hit for the family, and we'll fix it on the back end. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Dad, I'll do it. What do I have to do? Come to Henderson's office tomorrow at noon, Dad said. Bring the papers Elijah has. Fire Elijah. Sign everything over to us. We'll handle the rest. I can't leave the apartment. I have a monitor. Figure it out, Dad snapped. You're the genius security expert. Hack it. Loop the signal. Just be there. Okay, I said. I'll be there. I hung up. The room was silent. Elijah looked at me with a mix of horror and admiration. You are terrifyingly good at lying. I learned from the best, I said, looking at the photo of my mother on the mantelpiece. I walked over and placed the photo face down. My computer beeped. A secure chat window opened. It was Agent Miller. Miller, we got the audio. It's good, but not enough. They admitted bad men and trouble, but they didn't admit to the bomb specifically. We need Julian to say it. We need him to implicate Volkov. Mason, he'll be there tomorrow. I'll get him to say it. Miller, we will have a tactical team in the adjacent room. You will be wearing a wire. Do not engage physically. Julian might be armed. Volkov's men might be watching. Mason, I'm not afraid of Julian. Miller, you should be. A rat is most dangerous when it's cornered. I turned to Elijah. Draft the papers. Make them look real. The transfer of assets, the power of attorney, everything. You're not actually going to sign them, right? Oh, I'm going to sign them. I smiled coldly. But I'm going to add a clause in invisible ink. Invisible ink? Elijah raised an eyebrow. Is this a spy movie? Digital invisible ink, I corrected. I'm going to embed a metadata tag in the digital signature file. If they try to execute the transfer, it will automatically ping the IRS and the SEC with a fraud alert. But that's just a backup. Ideally, they'll be in handcuffs before the ink is dry. I looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was celebrating their victory. They thought they had finally broken the cash cow. They didn't realize the cow had turned into a bull. The next morning, I dressed in my best suit. Charcoal gray, tailored fit. I put on my Rolex. I wanted to look like the success they hated. I wanted to remind them of exactly what they were trying to steal. Agent Miller arrived at 10 a.m. with a technician. They fitted me with a wire. A tiny microphone taped to my sternum, hidden beneath my shirt and tie. The button cam is here, the tech said, adjusting my jacket. Don't cover your lapel. Keep your body turned toward whoever is speaking. Miller handed me a small earpiece. This is one way. You can hear me, but I can't hear you through this unless you speak into the mic. If things go south, say the code word, pineapple. We breach immediately. Pineapple? Seriously. It's distinct. You won't say it in casual conversation. Fine. Mason. Miller grabbed my arm before I left. Her eyes were intense. Remember, Julian is desperate. If he realizes it's a trap, he might try to use you as a shield. Keep your distance. I got this. I walked down to the garage. My ankle monitor was still on, but Miller had authorized a legal consultation window in the system, so the marshals wouldn't tackle me. I got into the Porsche. The leather seats felt cold. I gripped the steering wheel. This car was my sanctuary. It was the first thing I bought when I made my first million. Dad had kicked the tires and asked why I didn't buy a truck. Julian had asked how fast it went. Mom had asked how much the insurance cost. They never asked how I earned it. They never asked about the 80-hour weeks or the sleepless nights fighting hackers. They only saw the price tag. I drove to the law office on 4th Avenue. It was a sleazy firm in a strip mall, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a payday loan place. Henderson and Associates. Fitting. I parked the Porsche right in front, flanked by Dad's rusted Ford truck and Julian's leased BMW, which I made the payments on. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I walked in. The receptionist looked bored. She pointed to the conference room in the back. I opened the door. They were all there. Mom, Dad, Julian, and a sweaty man in a cheap suit who must be Henderson. Mason! Mom jumped up. She rushed to hug me, but I stepped back. Don't, I said. My voice was flat. Let's just get this over with. Desperate times, son, Dad said, not meeting my eyes. He was tapping his fingers on the table. We're doing this for you, right? For me. I sat down at the head of the table. Julian was leaning back in his chair, cleaning his fingernails with a pocket knife. He looked smug. Too smug. Did you bring the papers? Julian asked. Right here. I slapped the folder Elijah had prepared onto the table. Full durable power of attorney. Access to the Cayman accounts. The stock portfolio. The deed to the apartment. It's all yours. Julian's eyes lit up. He reached for the folder, but I slammed my hand down on it. Not yet, I said. I looked at Julian. I want the truth first. We don't have time for this, Henderson squeaked. The banks close at 5. Shut up, I snapped at the lawyer. I kept my eyes on Julian. I want to know, did you know it was radioactive? The room went deadly silent. What are you talking about? Mom said, her voice high and shrill. It was just some contraband. Cut the crap, Mom, I said. The FBI told me. Cobalt-60. A dirty bomb. Did you know? Julian laughed. He snapped the knife shut. Does it matter, bro? You're here. You're signing. Or you're going to prison. It matters to me, I said. I need to know if my own brother tried to give me cancer. Or blow me up. You're being dramatic, Julian sneered. It wasn't armed. It had a timer, but it wasn't set. It was just transport. Volkov said it was safe as long as you didn't open it. Bingo. He named Volkov. In my ear, Miller's voice crackled. Good. Push him on the payment. Get him to admit the debt. Volkov, I asked, feigning confusion. Who is Volkov? The guy who is going to peel my skin off if you don't sign those papers. Julian slammed his fist on the table. I owe him $2 million, Mason. $2 million. I lost it on the shorts. The market crashed. It wasn't my fault. So you sold me out for $2 million bucks? I asked quietly. You have $10 million. Julian shouted, standing up. You have the cars, the penthouse, the life. You think you're so special? You're just a nerd. Mason, a nerd who got lucky. I deserve a piece of it. We deserve it. We raised you. Dad chimed in, finding his courage now that Julian was yelling. We put a roof over your head, and you let us rot in that old house while you live like a king? It's payback, Mason. It's fair. Fair, I repeated. Trying to kill me is fair? Nobody was going to die. Mom cried. You were just going to get arrested. Maybe a few years in a nice white-collar prison. You'd be fine. And we could finally live. I looked at them, really looked at them. The greed was oozing out of their pores. They didn't see a son or a brother. They saw a bank account with legs. And what if I don't sign? I asked. Julian pulled a gun from his waistband. It was a small pistol, a Glock 26. He pointed it at my chest. Pineapple, I said instantly. What? Julian blinked. I said pineapple. Julian looked confused. Are you having a stroke? Sign the damn papers. He cocked the gun. I'm not kidding, Mason. I'll shoot you in the leg. You'll sign in blood if you have to. Julian, put it down. Mom screamed, finally realizing this had gone too far. No! Julian was sweating now. His eyes were wild. I'm not dying for his money. He signs or he bleeds. I'm sorry, Julian, I said, leaning back in my chair, but I think your account has been declined. Crash. The door behind me exploded inward. The sound was deafening. A flashbang grenade rolled into the room, exploding with a blinding white light and a concussive thump that rattled my teeth. FBI, get down. Get down. The windows shattered as tactical teams rappelled in from the roof. The front door was kicked off its hinges. Chaos. Pure, unadulterated chaos. Henderson, the lawyer, shrieked like a child and dove under the table. Mom threw her hands over her head, screaming. Dad froze, his cigar falling from his mouth onto the carpet. But Julian didn't drop the gun. Through the ringing in my ears and the smoke, I saw him pivot. He wasn't aiming at the police. He swung the gun back toward me. You rat! He screamed. Time slowed down. I saw his finger tightening on the trigger. I didn't think. I reacted. I kicked the heavy oak table with both legs, shoving it hard into his gut. Bang! The gun went off. I felt a stinging heat graze my shoulder, like a hornet's sting magnified by 1,000. Ideally, the bullet hit the plaster wall behind me. Julian doubled over as the table slammed into him. Before he could recover, a black-clad figure tackled him. It was Agent Miller. She didn't hesitate. She drove her armored forearm into his neck, slamming his face into the cheap carpet. Weapon secured. Suspect in custody. MOM. Dad, help me. Julian screamed, his face mashed against the floor. Mason set me up. 3 more agents swarmed him, zip-tying his hands behind his back. I sat there, breathing heavy, checking my shoulder. The suit jacket was torn, a line of red blood seeping through the gray fabric. Just a graze. I was alive. Mason, Miller yelled, pulling Julian up. Are you hit? I'm fine, I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky. Just a scratch. I looked around the room. It was a tableau of total defeat. Dad was pressed against the wall, handcuffed, looking old and small. Mom was sobbing hysterically, pleading with an agent who was reading her Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. But he's my son, Mom wailed, pointing at me. Mason, tell them it was a misunderstanding. I walked over to her. The agent paused. Mason, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We're family. You can't let them take us. Julian, he's just a boy. He didn't mean it. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who gave life to me, and then tried to trade it for a beach house. He shot at me, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. He pointed a gun at my head and pulled the trigger. And you? You packed a radioactive bomb in my bag and kissed me goodbye. I loved you, she sobbed. No, I said. You loved my utility. You loved what I could provide. You never loved me. I turned to the agent. Take them away. Mason, look at me, Dad yelled as they dragged him out. You're dead to us. You hear me? You have no family. I know, I said. That's the best news I've heard all day. They dragged Julian past me. He wasn't crying. He was staring at me with pure hate. Volkov will find you, Julian hissed. You think this is over? He wants his money. Let him come, I said, leaning in close so only he could hear. I'm a security consultant, Julian. I hunt predators for a living. You were just the warm-up. Miller shoved Julian forward. Move it. The room cleared out. The police were collecting evidence, the fake papers, the gun, the recording devices. I stood alone in the wrecked conference room. My shoulder was throbbing. My suit was ruined. My family was gone. Agent Miller walked back in. She looked at my shoulder. Paramedics are outside. You need to get that looked at. I'm okay, I said. You did good, Mason, she said. her tone softer than I had ever heard it. We got Volkov, too. We traced the call Julian made to him this morning. Interpol picked him up in Cyprus an hour ago. The whole network is coming down. Good, I said. And she reached into her pocket and pulled out a key, a small silver key. Since the suspects are in custody and the threat is neutralized, I think we can get that ankle monitor off you. I looked at the key. Then I looked at her. Thank you, Sarah. She smiled. Don't thank me yet. You have a lot of paperwork to do. And I think your Porsche got towed. It was in a fire lane. I laughed. A genuine, painful laugh that hurt my ribs. Of course it did. I walked out of the office and into the sunlight. The flashing lights of the police cars were blinding, but for the first time in 3 days, I didn't feel like a prisoner. I watched the police van drive away, carrying my father, my mother, and my brother. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't joy. It was relief. The heavy bag was finally gone. The silence of my apartment that night was heavier than the lead-lined box my mother had shoved into my hands. After the raid, after the adrenaline crashed, I was left with a throbbing shoulder and a life that looked like a bomb site. The bullet from Julian's gun had grazed my deltoid, leaving a jagged furrow of flesh that required 12 stitches. The doctor at the ER had asked if I wanted to call a family member to drive me home. I just laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that made the nurse look at me with pity. I'll take an Uber, I said. For the next 3 weeks, I existed in a state of suspended animation. I went to work remotely, patching security breaches for clients, staring at lines of code until my eyes burned. It was easier to fix a company's firewall than to process the fact that my mother had been willing to irradiate me for a payout. Elijah was my lifeline. He handled everything. The restraining orders, the revocation of the power of attorney, the freezing of joint accounts. He was a shark in court, but with me, he was the brother Julian should have been. They're turning on each other? Elijah told me one evening, pouring 2 fingers of scotch in my living room. It's ugly, Mason. I've seen messy divorces, I've seen custody battles, but this is a feeding frenzy. Tell me, I said, staring at the city lights. Julian is claiming he was coerced by your father. He says Robert masterminded the whole thing to save the house. Your father is claiming he has dementia and didn't understand what he was agreeing to. And your mother. Elijah paused, swirling his drink. Patricia is playing the martyr. She's writing letters to the judge saying she was a battered wife terrified of her son's gambling debts. They're all lying, I said. We know, and the prosecutor knows. But they're trying to cut deals. They want to plead down. No deals, I said, my voice hard. I want them to stand trial. I want every single text message, every email, every second of that video recording played in open court. I want the world to see them. The trial began 4 months later. It was the sensation of Seattle. The airport bomb family. The tabloids ate it up. I walked into the courtroom wearing a new suit. I sat behind the prosecutor. When they brought them in, the air left the room. They were wearing orange jumpsuits, handcuffs chained to their waists. Mom looked 20 years older. Her hair, usually dyed a perfect chestnut, was gray and stringy. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me. She didn't look remorseful. She looked angry. She mouthed something at me. I think it was ungrateful. Dad just stared at the floor. He looked shrunken, defeated. But Julian looked like a cornered rat. He was twitching, glaring at his public defender. The trial lasted 2 weeks. It was a slow, methodical dissection of their greed. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Miss Sterling, laid it out like a corporate audit. She showed the bank records. She showed the gambling losses. She showed the inheritance calculations Julian had scribbled on a notepad found in his bedroom, estimates of how much my stock portfolio would yield after taxes. They had priced my life down to the cent. But the nail in the coffin was the testimony of Dr. Eris, a radiation expert. If that device had detonated at 30,000 feet, Dr. Eris explained to the hushed jury, the radiation would have contaminated the air recycling system instantly. Everyone on that plane, 300 souls, would have inhaled cobalt-60 particles. It wouldn't be a quick death. It would be weeks of cellular degradation. Their organs would have liquefied. I saw the jurors look at the defense table. They didn't see a suburban family anymore. They saw monsters. Mom started sobbing. I didn't know. I thought it was just drugs, she wailed, disrupting the court. Order! The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Aries, one more outburst and you will be removed. He told me it was safe, she screamed, pointing at Julian. He said it was just a package. He's the bad one, not me. I'm a mother. Julian leaped up, fighting his restraints. You lying witch. You packed it. You bought the lead foil. You said Mason was expendable because he never visits. It was over. They had just confessed in open court. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Conspiracy to commit domestic terrorism. Attempted murder. Fraud. Trafficking in hazardous materials. The sentencing hearing was the final act. I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I walked to the podium. I didn't have a piece of paper. I didn't need notes. I looked at them. Really looked at them. For 34 years. I began, my voice steady, echoing in the silent room. I thought love was a transaction. I thought if I bought the right gifts, paid the right bills, achieved the right success, I would finally earn my place at your table. I paused. Mom was weeping into a tissue. Dad was shaking his head. I was wrong, I continued. You didn't see a son. You saw an asset class. You saw a retirement plan. You saw a bailout fund. When you handed me that bag, you didn't just hand me a bomb. You handed me the truth. You handed me my freedom. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, they showed no mercy when they planned to end my life for a gambling debt. I ask that you show them the same mercy they showed me. The judge nodded. He adjusted his glasses and looked down at the 3 people in orange. Robert Aries, Patricia Aries, Julian Aries. The callousness of your crimes is matched only by the staggering greed that motivated them. You were willing to sacrifice your own blood and hundreds of innocent travelers to cover a financial mistake. He sentenced Julian to 30 years without parole. The combination of the bomb, the attempted shooting of a witness, me, and the organized crime connections buried him. I didn't want the money, but I didn't want them to have a shrine to return to if they ever got out. I went back to the house one last time. It was eerie. The police tape was gone, but the front door was boarded up where the raid team had breached it. I had a key, the one I had kept on my keychain for a decade, hoping one day I'd use it to visit a loving family. I walked inside. The air was stale. The silence was absolute. The living room was exactly as they had left it. The half-drunk glass of Chardonnay was still on the coffee table, now a moldy crust at the bottom of the glass. The cigar butt was in the ashtray. I walked through the rooms like a ghost. I went into Julian's room. It was a teenager's fantasy frozen in time. Posters of sports cars, video game consoles, and stacks of unopened bills hidden in the drawers. I found his ledger, a notebook where he tracked his wins and losses. The sheer delusion on those pages was staggering. He truly believed he was one big win away from being a billionaire. Then I went to my old room. It wasn't a room anymore. It was a storage unit. Boxes of Mom's old clothes, broken Christmas decorations, a treadmill covered in dust. There was no trace of me, no photos of my graduation, no trophies from my debate team days. Nothing. They had erased me long before they tried to kill me. I found a box in the back of the closet labeled Mason. I opened it, hoping for some sentimental memento. It was full of tax returns. My tax returns. Copies they had asked me for to help with financial aid years ago. They had kept them to track my income growth. It wasn't a memory box. It was a dossier. I took the box downstairs to the fireplace. I didn't care about the smoke damage. I lit a match. I watched the papers curl and blacken. I watched the numbers, the salary figures, the bonuses, the evidence of my hard work turn into ash. Goodbye, I whispered. I hired a liquidation company the next day. Sell everything, I told them. Whatever doesn't sell, donate it. Whatever can't be donated, trash it. Even the photos? The liquidator asked. Especially the photos, I said. I sold the house to a young couple. They were excited. They talked about painting the nursery blue. They talked about planting a garden. They saw a future where I only saw a crime scene. I gave them a good deal. I wanted the house to be filled with something other than resentment. The last thing to go was the Porsche. I got it out of the impound lot. It had a scratch on the door from the towing. I sat in the driver's seat. This car had been my pride. It was the symbol of my success. But now, every time I looked at it, I remembered driving to the lawyer's office with a wire taped to my chest. I remembered Julian's greed reflecting in the polished hood. It was tainted. I drove it to a dealership. I want to sell it, I told the manager. Trade in? He asked, eyeing the sleek lines of the Panamera. No, I said. Just sell it. I want a check. And then I want to call a taxi. I walked away with a check for $80,000. I donated every cent of it to a charity that helps victims of domestic financial abuse. It was the most expensive therapy session of my life, but it was worth it. 1 year later, the Seattle rain was drizzling against the glass walls of my new office, but for the first time, the gray didn't bother me. I wasn't just a consultant anymore. After the trial, my profile skyrocketed. I had been offered a position as a Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, for a major tech firm in London, the same London I was supposed to fly to on that cursed Tuesday. Life had changed in ways I couldn't have engineered. I was sitting across from Sarah Miller at a small coffee shop near Pike Place Market. She wasn't wearing her FBI windbreaker. She was wearing a raincoat and a smile that reached her eyes. So, she said, blowing on her latte. London, you're really doing it. Yeah, I said. The contract is signed. Visa is approved. I leave tomorrow. It suits you, she said. You look lighter. I feel lighter, I admitted. I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to wonder if a birthday text is a preamble to a loan request. Sarah nodded. We had become friends over the last year. Trauma bonds are strong, but we had built something real on top of it. Mutual respect. She had saved my life. I had helped her take down a major crime syndicate. Did you hear? Sarah asked, her voice dropping a notch. About Volkov? I heard he took a plea, I said. He's singing like a canary, she grinned. Giving up names in Moscow, New York, everywhere. Because of you, Mason. Because you stood your ground in that conference room. I didn't have a choice, I shrugged. You always have a choice, she corrected me. You could have run. You could have folded. You didn't. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Have a safe flight, Mason. And for God's sake, check your own bag. I laughed. Felt good to laugh about it now. Don't worry. I bought a transparent suitcase. Nothing to hide. Leaving Elijah was harder. He drove me to the airport. Not in a limo this time, but in his beat-up station wagon. He had just had his first kid, a baby girl. You're the godfather, he reminded me as we pulled up to the terminal. That means you have to come back for christenings and birthdays. Mandatory attendance. I'll be there, I promised. And I'll bring gifts that aren't radioactive. Too soon, man? Elijah chuckled, slapping my back. Go get Tiger. London isn't ready for you. Walking into Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was the final test. My heart rate spiked as soon as I smelled the jet fuel and floor wax. My palms started to sweat. I checked my pulse on my Apple Watch. 110 BPM. It's just a building, I told myself. It's just a flight. I walked to the check-in counter. I had one suitcase. A new one. Hardshell. Bright blue. Impossible to slip anything into without me noticing. I checked it in. The tag printed out. LHR London Heathrow. Then came security. I stood in the TSA pre-check line. I watched the people ahead of me taking off their belts, putting their laptops in bins. I remembered the red lights, the screaming alarms, the knee in my back. Next, An agent called out. I stepped forward. ID and boarding pass, the agent said. He looked tired. Just a guy doing a job. I handed them over. He scanned the pass. Beep. Green light. Mask down for a second? He asked. I lowered my mask. He looked at my face, then at the ID. Mason Aries, he read. He paused. He looked at me again. There was a flicker of recognition. My face had been on the news for weeks. I held my breath. Was he going to call a supervisor? Was I on a no-fly list despite the exoneration? The agent smiled. A genuine, tired smile. Have a good flight, Mr. Aries. Good luck in London. He handed my ID back. Thank you, I exhaled. I walked through the metal detector. Silence. No beep. No sirens. No SWAT team. Just the quiet hum of the conveyor belt returning my backpack. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the gate. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall. It was the last drop of the old Mason. I sat at the gate, watching the Boeing 777 being prepped on the tarmac. The massive engines were waiting to devour the sky. I pulled out my phone. I had one notification. It was from the prison email system. Message from inmate 8940C, Patricia Aries. Do you wish to accept? My thumb hovered over the accept button. I thought about what she might say. More guilt? More blame? Or maybe a fake apology? A last-ditch effort to worm her way back into my head before she spent her first night in a cell? I thought about the sunk cost fallacy. In economics and in life, it's the idea that you should keep investing in something just because you've already spent so much time and resources on it. You stay in a bad job because you've been there 10 years. You stay in a toxic relationship because you have history. But a bad investment is a bad investment. The market doesn't care about your feelings. And neither does a toxic family. I had spent 34 years investing in Robert, Patricia, and Julian. I had poured my love, my money, and my sanity into a black hole. The return on investment was zero. Actually, it was negative. It was a radioactive box. I moved my thumb. Block sender. Are you sure you want to permanently block communications from this contact? Yes. The notification vanished. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled down. Dad, Julian, Mom, select all, delete. The screen refreshed. They were gone. Just names in a database somewhere, no longer linked to me. Flight 189 to London is now boarding Group 1. The announcer's voice chimed. I stood up. I grabbed my carry-on. It was light. Just my laptop, a book, and a change of clothes. No hidden agendas. No heavy expectations. No guilt. I walked down the jet bridge. The tunnel felt like a birth canal. I was emerging on the other side as someone new. I found my seat. 1A, first class. I had paid for it myself. Not to show off, but because I deserved it. The flight attendant offered me a glass of champagne. Celebrating something special today, sir? She asked, noticing my smile. I looked out the window as the plane began to push back. The runway lights blurred into streaks of gold. I thought about the empty house. I thought about the burned tax returns. I thought about the silence of the phone. Yes, I said, taking the glass. I'm celebrating a successful divestment. I'm sorry. She looked confused. I'm celebrating freedom. I corrected myself. Just freedom. The engines roared to life, pressing me back into the seat. As the wheels lifted off the ground, leaving the American soil behind, I closed my eyes. The alarms were silent. The box was gone. And for the first time in my life, I was flying solo. And the view from up here, it was spectacular. Thank you for taking this journey with me. It wasn't an easy story to tell. Reliving the betrayal, the fear, and the moment I realized my family was my enemy. It takes a toll. But I shared this because I know I'm not alone. If there is one lesson I want you to take away from my nightmare, it is this: DNA is not a suicide pact. We are taught from a young age that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you must honor your parents no matter what. But there is a line. When family becomes a danger to your mental health, your financial security, or your physical safety, you have the right, no, the duty to walk away. I fell victim to the sunk cost fallacy. I thought that because I had spent years trying to please them, I just needed to try a little bit harder to get their love. But you cannot buy love from people who only see you as a resource. You cannot fix people who are committed to breaking you. Financial abuse is abuse. Emotional manipulation is abuse. And just because someone gave birth to you or grew up with you does not give them a lifetime pass to destroy you. Trust your gut. If a situation feels wrong, like a heavy box you aren't allowed to open, put it down. Walk away. Call the authorities. Protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, you are the only one who has to live your life. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to make the hard choice to cut off a toxic family member? Or have you ever felt pressured to save someone who refused to save themselves? Leave a comment below with your story, or just type freedom if you believe that everyone deserves to be free from toxic relationships. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps more people find the story, and maybe, just maybe, it will help someone else put down their heavy bag before it's too late. Stay safe, stay smart, and keep your baggage light. Mason, signing off.